The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of Eleanor Mitchell's modest two-bedroom house in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, casting delicate shadows across the worn hardwood floors. At 73, Eleanor had developed a routine as predictable as the sunrise itself. Wake at 6:30, prepare a cup of Earl Grey tea, and sit by the kitchen window watching the cardinals flutter around the bird feeder her late husband Harold had built 20 years ago. This particular Tuesday morning in early September carried a hint of autumn's approach. The maple tree in her front yard had begun its annual transformation, the leaves showing the first blush of orange at their edges. Eleanor wrapped her quilted robe tighter around her shoulders as she shuffled to the kitchen, her arthritic knees protesting with each step. "Another day, Harold," she whispered to the empty chair across from hers, a habit she'd maintained in the 5 years since his passing. The silence that answered back had never gotten easier to bear. Eleanor reached for the ceramic cookie jar on the counter, a whimsical pig painted in bright pink that her grandson Tyler had given her for Christmas 3 years ago. Inside, she kept her rainy day cash, a practice from a generation that had lived through the Depression and never quite trusted banks with everything. She lifted the pig's head, expecting to count the familiar stack of bills she checked every few days. The jar was empty. Her heart skipped, then thundered in her chest. She blinked hard, reached inside again, her fingers searching the smooth ceramic interior. Nothing. Not even the envelope she kept the bills in. "No, no, no," she muttered, setting the jar down with trembling hands. She opened every cabinet, checked behind the microwave, even looked in the refrigerator in a moment of desperate confusion. The money, nearly $3,000 she'd saved over the past 2 years, was gone. Eleanor sank into her kitchen chair, her mind racing through possibilities. She hadn't had many visitors lately. Her daughter Patricia lived in Chicago and only visited monthly. The cleaning lady, Maria, had been with her for 15 years and was as trustworthy as family. The only other person with a key was Tyler, she breathed, the name catching in her throat like a pill swallowed wrong. Her 22-year-old grandson had been staying with her for the past 3 weeks, just until he got back on his feet after losing another job. Patricia had begged Eleanor to take him in, promised he'd changed, sworn he was done with all that trouble from before. Against her better judgment, against the voice in her head that sounded remarkably like Harold's, Eleanor had agreed. She thought about the signs she'd ignored. Tyler coming home at odd hours, the way he'd avoided her eyes at dinner, how he'd suddenly had money for new clothes despite claiming to be broke. The realization hit her like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. Eleanor stood slowly, gripping the edge of the table for support. She made her way to the spare bedroom where Tyler had been staying. The door was ajar, the room empty. The bed was unmade, clothes strewn across the floor. His duffel bag was gone. On the nightstand, she found a crumpled receipt from a gas station dated yesterday evening. Premium gas, energy drinks, and cigarettes. $47, paid in cash. Her legs gave out, and she sat heavily on the unmade bed. The room smelled like cologne and something else. That sweet, cloying scent she remembered from when Tyler had been in trouble before. Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. Eleanor forced herself to search the room methodically. Under the mattress, she found 3 $20 bills, her 20s. She recognized the way she folded them. In the wastebasket, torn into pieces, was an envelope from a payday loan company marked Final Notice. She pieced it together on the bedspread. Tyler owed $800 due 3 days ago. The house phone rang, startling her. She hurried to answer it, hoping against hope it might be Tyler with an explanation. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Karen from Mercy Hospital Billing Department. I'm calling about an outstanding emergency room bill for Tyler Morrison from last Tuesday night." Eleanor hung up without responding. Last Tuesday, Tyler had told her he was going to a movie with friends. Another lie to add to the pile. She dialed Tyler's cell phone number with shaking fingers, straight to voicemail. His cheerful recorded voice, "Hey, it's Ty, leave a message," mocked her. She tried again, and again. On the 4th attempt, a mechanical voice informed her the number was no longer in service. Eleanor called her daughter next. Patricia answered on the 3rd ring, her voice bright with morning energy. "Hi, Mom. I was just thinking about you. How's everything?" "Patricia," Eleanor's voice cracked. "Tyler's gone, and he took my savings." The silence on the other end stretched so long Eleanor wondered if the call had dropped. "Mom, that's impossible. Tyler wouldn't." "The money's gone, Patricia. All of it. And so is he. Maybe you misplaced it? You know, sometimes you forget." "I didn't forget anything," Eleanor snapped, then immediately softened her tone. "I'm sorry, but I know what happened. I found receipts, bills. He needed money, and he took mine." Patricia's breathing grew heavy on the other end. Oh, Mom. Oh, God. I'm so sorry. I really believed he'd changed this time. I know you did, honey. So did I. I'll drive down today. We'll figure this out. We'll go to the police. No. The word came out firmer than Eleanor intended. No police. Not yet. Mom, he stole from you. We can't just let him. I need to think, Patricia. I need to go to the bank first. Check my accounts. Make sure. She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't voice the fear that Tyler might have taken more than just the cookie jar money. I'm coming down, Patricia insisted. I'll leave in an hour. Tomorrow, Eleanor said. Come tomorrow. I need today to process this. After hanging up, Eleanor sat in her living room, staring at the family photos lining the mantel. Tyler's high school graduation picture smiled back at her. That crooked grin he'd inherited from Harold, the bright eyes full of promise. Next to it, a photo from last Christmas. Tyler with his arm around her, both of them laughing at something Patricia had said. He'd been clean then, working at the hardware store, talking about maybe taking some community college classes. What had gone wrong? When had her sweet grandson, the boy who'd spent summers helping Harold in the garage, who'd written her thank you notes in crayon, become someone who could steal from his own grandmother? Eleanor dressed carefully, choosing her navy blue dress with the small flowers. The one Harold had always said made her look distinguished. She fixed her silver hair, applied a touch of lipstick. If she was going to the bank to discover the full extent of the damage, she'd do it with dignity. The walk to First National took 15 minutes. Eleanor had banked there for 47 years, knew most of the tellers by name. The familiar marble columns and polished floors usually comforted her, but today they felt imposing, almost accusatory. Good morning, Mrs. Mitchell, Debbie, the head teller, called out cheerfully. How are you this beautiful day? Eleanor managed a weak smile. I need to check all my accounts, please. And I need to speak with Mr. Jameson if he's available. Debbie's smile faltered slightly at Eleanor's serious tone. Of course. Let me print out your statements, and I'll see if Mr. Jameson is free. The numbers on the statements blurred as Eleanor tried to focus. Checking account? $1,247, down from the $1,800 she'd had last week. Savings account? $5,340. It should have been over $8,000. Her hands trembled as she traced the withdrawals, all made with her ATM card over the past 2 weeks, all in amounts just under the daily limit. Eleanor? Robert Jameson's familiar voice drew her attention. The bank manager stood beside her, his kind face creased with concern. Debbie said you needed to speak with me? Eleanor looked up at him. This man who'd helped her through Harold's funeral expenses, who'd sat with her to sort out the life insurance. Robert, I need help. My grandson took my ATM card, made withdrawals without my permission. Robert's expression grew serious. He guided her to his office, closed the door, and poured her a glass of water from the pitcher on his desk. Tell me everything. Eleanor explained about the missing cash, Tyler's disappearance, the withdrawals. Robert listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. We can dispute the charges, he said when she finished. File a fraud claim. But Eleanor, if Tyler had your PIN... He watched me, Eleanor said quietly. At the grocery store last week. I should have been more careful. This isn't your fault, Robert said firmly. But I need to ask, do you want to press charges? Without a police report, recovering the funds will be difficult. Eleanor stared at her hands, folded in her lap. The wedding ring Harold had placed there 51 years ago caught the light from Robert's desk lamp. What would Harold do? But she knew the answer. Harold had been a man of principle, but also of family. Blood is blood, he used to say, even when it disappoints you. Not yet, she said finally. But I need to protect what's left. Is there a way to make sure this doesn't happen again? Robert leaned back in his chair, studying her with the careful attention of someone who'd known her long enough to recognize when she was forming a plan. What are you thinking, Eleanor? I'm not sure yet, she admitted. But I need to do something. Something that might help Tyler in the long run, not just punish him for what he's done. You're a better person than most, Robert said softly. Harold always said you had the biggest heart in Cedar Rapids. Harold also said I was too trusting, Eleanor replied with a sad smile. Maybe it's time I proved him wrong. They spent the next hour reviewing her accounts, changing passwords, canceling cards. Robert helped her set up new protections, including a special savings account that required in-person authorization for any withdrawals. As Eleanor signed the paperwork, an idea began to form, hazy at first, like the morning mist over the Cedar River, but gradually taking shape. Robert, she said as she prepared to leave, what would you say if I told you I wanted to set up a trust? Something with very specific conditions? Robert's eyebrows rose. I'd say we have an excellent trust attorney who could help you. What kind of conditions are you thinking about? Eleanor stood, smoothing her dress. The kind that might save my grandson from himself, or at least give him the chance to try. Walking home, Eleanor felt the weight of the morning's discoveries pressing on her shoulders. But beneath the hurt and disappointment, something else stirred. Determination. Tyler had stolen from her, yes. He'd betrayed her trust, broken her heart, but he was still her grandson. Still the boy who'd cried on her shoulder when his goldfish died, who'd proudly shown her every report card, good or bad. The cardinal was back at the bird feeder when she arrived home, its red plumage brilliant against the September sky. Eleanor watched it for a moment, remembering how Harold had taught Tyler to identify different birds, how patient he'd been with the fidgety 6-year-old. I won't give up on him, Harold, she said to the empty kitchen, but I won't enable him either. Not anymore. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. St. Mark's Community Church. A warm voice answered. Helen, it's Eleanor Mitchell. Is Pastor Dave available? I need to talk to him about the addiction recovery program you run, and about making a rather unusual donation. As she waited to be transferred, Eleanor looked again at the empty cookie jar. The pig's painted smile seemed almost knowing now, as if it understood that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as losses. Sometimes, Eleanor thought, you had to let go of what you'd saved to save what really mattered. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Eleanor had always saved for rainy days. Maybe, she thought, this was exactly the storm she'd been saving for all along. Chapter 1 ends here. 11,147 characters. Tentar novamente. Gok editar. Chapter 2, The Plan Takes Shape. The rain that had started during Eleanor's phone call with Pastor Dave had transformed into a steady downpour by evening. She sat at her kitchen table, legal pad before her, making lists and crossing them out. 3 cups of tea had gone cold as she worked, and the notebook pages were filled with her careful handwriting. Pastor Dave Brennan had listened to her story without judgment, his voice gentle over the phone. Eleanor, what you're considering, it's admirable, but it's also going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. Harder than burying my husband? She'd asked. Different kind of hard, he'd replied. Harold's passing was something that happened to you. This is something you're choosing. That takes a special kind of courage. Now, as lightning illuminated her kitchen in brief, stark flashes, Eleanor reviewed what she'd learned. St. Mark's ran a comprehensive addiction recovery program, 90 days minimum, with job training, counseling, and strict accountability measures. They had a waiting list, but Pastor Dave had gently suggested that a significant donation might help create an opening. The doorbell rang, startling her from her planning. Eleanor glanced at the clock, nearly 8 in the evening. Through the peephole, she saw Maria, her cleaning lady, standing on the porch with an umbrella and a covered dish. Mrs. Eleanor! Maria exclaimed when the door opened. I heard about Tyler from Patricia. She called me, worried about you being alone. I brought soup. Eleanor's eyes welled up, the first tears she'd allowed herself all day. Oh, Maria, you didn't have to. Nonsense. 20 years I've been taking care of this house. You think I don't take care of the lady in it too? Maria bustled past her, heading straight for the kitchen. Sit. You look like you haven't eaten all day. The soup was Maria's famous pozole, rich with hominy and tender pork, the broth spiced just enough to warm Eleanor from the inside out. As she ate, Maria moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, washing the teacups, wiping counters, creating order where Eleanor had left chaos. He's not a bad boy, Maria said suddenly, her back to Eleanor as she dried dishes. Tyler, I've known him since he was little. Remember when he helped me move my mother's furniture? Wouldn't take any money, just asked for some of my tamales. I remember, Eleanor said softly. But the drugs. Maria turned, her usually cheerful face serious. They change people. My nephew, Roberto, same thing. Stole from his mother, his sisters, even took his little brother's PlayStation to sell. She paused, choosing her words carefully. You know what finally helped him? Eleanor shook her head. His mother stopped helping him, stopped giving money, stopped making excuses, let him hit what they call the bottom. Nearly killed her to do it, but Roberto's been clean 3 years now. Has a job, apartment, even coaching Little League. How did she stand it? Knowing he was out there, suffering? Maria sat across from Eleanor, reaching over to squeeze her weathered hands. She said loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from consequences. Sometimes it means letting those consequences teach what words cannot. After Maria left, Eleanor felt more settled. She called Patricia to postpone her visit until the weekend, then spent the rest of the evening refining her plan. By the time she went to bed, she had a clear path forward. Unconventional, perhaps, but clear. The next morning dawned crystal clear, the storm having washed the air clean. Eleanor dressed with purpose, choosing her burgundy blazer, what Harold had called her business battle armor. Today would require all the strength she could muster. Her first stop was the office of Martin Summers, the attorney Robert Jameson had recommended. His office occupied the second floor of a restored Victorian on 3rd Avenue. All dark wood and leather-bound books. Martin himself was younger than Eleanor had expected, perhaps early 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Mitchell," he greeted her, "Robert spoke highly of you. Said you had an interesting situation regarding a trust?" Eleanor settled into the leather chair across from his desk. "Mr. Summers, I need to create something unusual. A trust that can only be accessed under very specific conditions." She outlined her plan. The remaining money in her savings, just over $5,000, would go into an irrevocable trust. Tyler could only access it after completing a certified addiction treatment program, maintaining steady employment for 6 months, and passing regular drug tests for a full year. Additionally, he'd need to complete a financial literacy course and perform 200 hours of community service. Martin took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. And if he doesn't meet these conditions? Then on his 30th birthday, the money goes to St. Mark's Addiction Recovery Program. That's in 8 years. You're giving him significant time. He's going to need it, Eleanor said quietly. And I want to add one more thing. If he completes all the requirements, there's a bonus. A matching amount from my life insurance beneficiary designation. Martin's eyebrows rose. That's very generous considering the circumstances. "Mr. Summers, my grandson stole approximately $8,000 from me. If this trust motivates him to get clean, to build a real life, then I'll have turned that theft into an investment. If not," she shrugged, "then at least the money will help someone else's grandson." They spent 2 hours crafting the documents. Eleanor insisted on several additional provisions. Tyler would need to write letters of apology to specific people he'd wronged, attend weekly family counseling sessions if she was still living, and the employment had to be verified W-2 work, not under-the-table jobs. "This is quite comprehensive," Martin observed as they reviewed the final draft. "But I have to ask, how will Tyler learn about this trust?" Eleanor smiled for the first time that day. "Leave that to me." Her next stop was unexpected, the Cedar Rapids Public Library. Eleanor hadn't been there in months, but she knew they had computers available for public use. She needed to do something that felt foreign to her nature, investigate her own grandson. With help from a patient librarian, Eleanor learned to navigate social media. Tyler's Facebook page hadn't been updated in weeks, but his friend Jake's page told a different story. Photos from 2 nights ago showed Tyler at what appeared to be a party, his eyes glassy, surrounded by people Eleanor didn't recognize. In one photo, he was holding a wad of cash, her cash, grinning at the camera. "Found what you needed?" the librarian asked gently, noticing Eleanor's distress. "Unfortunately, yes," Eleanor replied, printing several pages. Evidence, she thought grimly. Not for the police, but for Tyler himself. Sometimes people needed to see who they'd become through someone else's eyes. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Eleanor was transplanting some late-blooming mums when a battered Honda Civic pulled up. Jake Morrison, Tyler's best friend since middle school, climbed out, looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. M," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. I heard about Tyler." Eleanor set down her trowel, studying the young man. Jake had always been the steadier of the two, managed to graduate college, had a job at the local bank. "Did Tyler send you?" "No, ma'am. I haven't heard from him since." Jake shuffled his feet. "Since he showed up at my place Monday night with a bunch of cash, wanting to party. I told him to leave. We got into it pretty bad." "You told him to leave?" Eleanor couldn't hide her surprise. Jake finally looked at her directly. "Mrs. M, I've been clean for 2 years. I knew where that money came from. Tyler's not exactly subtle when he's using. He was bragging about how he'd finally gotten what was owed to him." Eleanor's heart clenched. "Owed to him?" "He said..." Jake paused, clearly conflicted. "He said you had all this money saved while he was struggling. That family should share, not hoard. I told him he was full of shit, sorry ma'am, and that you'd done nothing but help him. That's when he got mad and left. Do you know where he is now?" Jake shook his head. "But I know he was talking about heading to Kansas City. Said he had a connection there for a business opportunity." "Mrs. M, the people he's been hanging with lately, they're bad news. Like, really bad news." Eleanor absorbed this information, filed it away. "Jake, why are you telling me this?" The young man's eyes filled with tears. He quickly blinked away. "Because you and Mr. Harold were the only adults who ever gave a damn about me. You fed me dinner I don't know how many times, helped me with college applications, never made me feel like the poor kid with the drunk mom. I couldn't help Tyler, but maybe I can help you understand. It's the drugs, Mrs. M. It's not the Tyler we know. Eleanor stood, walked over to Jake, and did something that surprised them both. She hugged him. Thank you, she whispered, for trying to help him, for staying clean, for being brave enough to come here. After Jake left, Eleanor went inside and made another phone call, this one to a private investigator Robert had recommended, a former police detective named Carol Washington. I don't want him arrested, Eleanor explained after outlining the situation. I just need to know where he is, what he's doing, and I need you to deliver something to him when you find him. What kind of something? Carol asked. A letter, and information about a trust that could change his life, if he's willing to work for it. Carol quoted her rates, which would eat into Eleanor's checking account significantly. Eleanor didn't hesitate. When can you start? Already am, Carol replied. Kansas City's a good lead. Drug theft from family, heading to a larger city. It's a pattern. Usually means they're either running from other debts or looking to score bigger. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. That evening, Eleanor sat at her kitchen table again, this time with good stationery and her favorite pen. The letter to Tyler took 7 drafts before she was satisfied. My dear Tyler, she began. By the time you read this, you'll know that I know what you've done. You took my savings, money I scraped together dollar by dollar, money that represented my security and independence. More than that, you took my trust and crushed it. She wrote about her love for him, her memories of the little boy he'd been, her dreams for the man he could still become. She didn't minimize what he'd done or make excuses, but she also didn't close the door. I've created a trust in your name with what money I have left. It's yours if you're willing to earn it through recovery, hard work, and accountability. This isn't a punishment, Tyler. It's a lifeline. The question is whether you're ready to grab it. Eleanor sealed the letter, addressed it simply to Tyler, and set it aside for Carol Washington. Then she made one more call. Patricia, it's Mom. I need you to do something for me, and you're not going to like it. She explained about the trust, the conditions, the private investigator. Patricia's protest came fast and fierce. Mom, he stole from you. You're rewarding him? I'm giving him a choice, Eleanor corrected. There's a difference. What if he just steals from someone else? What if he overdoses before he even sees your letter? Eleanor closed her eyes, Harold's voice echoing in her memory. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, Ellie, but you can make sure they know salvation is possible. Then I'll have done what I could, she told her daughter. I'll have chosen love over anger, hope over resignation. That's all any of us can do. Patricia's silence stretched long before she spoke again, her voice small. I failed him. Didn't I? As a mother? We all failed him by enabling him for too long, Eleanor said gently. But failure isn't final unless we make it so. We're still his family. That means something, even when, especially when, it's hard. Later, as Eleanor prepared for bed, she found herself in Tyler's abandoned room again. This time she noticed things she'd missed in her initial shock. A library card, expired but kept. A photo of him with Harold working on a car. A Father's Day card he'd made her sign for Harold when he was 8. To the best grandpa who's like a dad. She collected these items, placed them in a box. Evidence of the good that still existed somewhere inside her grandson. Evidence that people were more than their worst moments. The pig cookie jar sat empty on the kitchen counter, its painted smile unchanged. Eleanor patted its head as she passed. We're not done yet, she whispered. Outside, the September night was crisp and clear. Stars dotted the Iowa sky like scattered seeds of light. Somewhere out there, Tyler was running, from his debts, his family, himself. But Eleanor had planted different seeds today. Accountability wrapped in love, consequences cushioned by hope. Time would tell which seeds would grow. Son, I always hoped was hiding under all that privilege. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Maybe that's the gift in all this. Maybe some people need to lose everything to find out who they really are. Maybe, Margaret agreed. Or maybe we all have both versions inside us. The greedy and the generous, the cruel and the kind, and our circumstances determine which one wins. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Mrs. Patterson's grandson is deployed. She's trying to video call him but can't figure out the computer. I told her I'd help after work. Wanna come? She makes incredible pound cake. Margaret showed Eleanor the message. Such a small thing, helping an elderly woman use technology. But it represented everything that had changed. Michael thinking of others, including her in his life, building community instead of schemes. Go, Eleanor encouraged. Life's too short to miss good pound cake and second chances. An hour later, Margaret found herself in Mrs. Patterson's living room, watching Michael patiently explain video calling to the elderly woman. His hands, once soft from a life of ease, now showed the scars of honest work as they guided her through the process. When her grandson's face appeared on screen, Mrs. Patterson cried with joy. "Bless you," she told Michael. "Bless both of you." As they ate pound cake and listened to Mrs. Patterson chat with her grandson in Afghanistan, Margaret caught Michael's eye. He smiled. Not the calculating smile she remembered from before, but something genuine and unguarded. This was who her son was becoming. A man who fixed things for neighbors who couldn't afford repairs, who taught job skills to other broken people, who spent his evening helping an old woman see her grandson's face. Not perfect, not fully redeemed, but trying with every action to balance the scales he'd tipped so drastically. Later, walking back to their cars, Michael spoke quietly. "I know I can never make up for what I did to you. Even if I spend the rest of my life trying, it won't erase that betrayal." "No," Margaret agreed, "it won't. But I'm going to keep trying anyway. Every day. Not for forgiveness, but because it's the only way I can live with myself." Margaret stopped walking, looking at her son in the lamplight. "Michael, I need you to understand something. I'm not waiting for you to earn my forgiveness. I'm not keeping score. I'm simply choosing to move forward, to see who you're becoming rather than staying trapped in who you were." "Why?" The question he kept asking, still unable to comprehend Grace. "Because carrying anger is exhausting, and I'm too old to waste energy on emotions that don't serve me. Because you're doing the work, real work, to change. And because, despite everything, you're still my son. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it means I'm willing to see if we can build something new on the ruins of what you destroyed." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "I love you, Mom. I know I forgot that for a while. Let greed drown it out. But I never stopped loving you." "I know," Margaret said softly. "Love was never the problem. The problem was that you loved money more." "Not anymore," he said firmly. "Now I know what real wealth looks like. It looks like Mr. Chen bringing me vegetables from his garden, like Mrs. Patterson's pound cake, like you standing here, still willing to know me after everything." They parted ways, each driving to their separate homes but connected by tentative threads of renewal. Margaret returned to her grand house, Michael to his garage apartment, but the distance between them continued to shrink, measured now in trust rebuilt rather than miles traveled. That night, Margaret updated her will again, adding a codicil. Not money for Michael. He neither expected nor deserved that. But she set aside funds for a foundation in her late husband's name, one that would teach job skills to people rebuilding their lives. She named Michael as a board advisor. Not trustee. He would guide but not control, contribute but not benefit. It was a small gesture, a recognition that her son had found purpose in his fall. And perhaps, Margaret thought as she signed the papers, that was worth more than any inheritance she could leave. The knowledge that from the ashes of greed and betrayal, something worthwhile could grow.